My name is Jason Enai, and I'm an Enai Eskrima. Welcome to the Eskrima podcast. I don't normally do it in the beginning, and I'm supposed to, but like, comment, and share if you like what you see and hear. This is mostly a way to document my experience. For those of you who are just starting to see, I'm getting a little bit of views, and although I'm not really doing it for the views, I'm doing it mostly just so that I can reflect back, right? So I just watched my buddy Chris LaCava's, he just recently did a video on notebooks and things like that, and it made me think about all of my notebooks and certificates and pictures, and also a little bit of regret because in the nine system of Eskrima, my father really prided himself in trying to maintain an oral tradition. So we had written curriculum. I have written curriculum. I have like whole binders of my father's completely structured written curriculum prior to his passing, and I have many binders of notes and development on my side. And but I don't have a lot of pictures of training when I was like 6 or 7 or 8. I got a picture here and there. Maybe there was some Super 8 film out there at one time of me and I think my Uncle Jimmy Tacosa and Perry Craver doing something, and I was like, I couldn't have been more than 3 or something like that. But he's right. His video was a lot about just keeping notes and keeping the pictures in one place, keeping your certificates. If you're an instructor, you know that you probably have more certificates than what you can put on the wall or would put on the wall, but they're good for memory. And there's a saying, there's a memory expert back from like maybe the 50s or 60s, and it's Harold Lorraine, and he goes, remembering is reminding, and reminding is association. You develop a lot of associations with the different experiences you have, and those mementos are those certificates, like the memorial that we did here for the 23rd annual Montesoro Memorial Seminar Workout. The certificates, those things you can remember. I listed some of the instructors. Fortunately, Master Frank Riamas was he was a surprise instructor because he had happened to support, and I had never gotten to see him teach. And of course, none of my students have seen him to teach. The part of the purpose of the head of the system for the United System of Eskrima is the preservation and propagation of Filipino martial arts, specifically the United System of Eskrima. But it doesn't say only the United System of Eskrima. It is incumbent upon me to make sure that my students are aware of and at least exposed to a little bit to other points of view and perspective. I'm a big fan of the Socratic method, and part of that is being open to maybe we're wrong, right? Maybe there's something that we can learn from somewhere else. Maybe we forgot something, or maybe it's just a good turn of the rotation of the cube that allows us to get more perspective. But going back to the original thought, those certificates are there, and unfortunately I didn't have Grandmaster Riamas in the list of instructors or the event for that. But it serves as a memory. That coupled with my online members being able to view the videos for posterity's sake, if not for educational sake, is useful. So yeah, great video, Chris. Great video on that. But then also showed something else that was really cool, which is what I wanted to talk about today. Patrick and I were talking about that last night, reflecting upon like what we do after any kind of event. As we discuss the results and our successes and where we can improve and what that would look like and things. And we just talked about longevity and training. The nice thing about a notebook or any kind of mementos as a way of time stamping, if you will, your journey is the evidence of maturity in an art, right? it's different. I mean, like, if you hop around one art and another art and another art, you'll develop for sure. And if you continue to dedicate yourself, you gain knowledge. But you're tasked with the monumental kind of challenge with regards to, like, if you're getting sources of information from several different instructor sources, right? You're going to have to figure a way to make them work together in your mind. It's I used to tell students, at least over the last 5 years or so, like, there's no lines, there's no boxes that are containing your knowledge and skill, right? There's no separation, not really in a fight, right? Your opponent can't tell if you're using jujitsu on them per se, versus a Kempo technique versus an Eskrima or Kali technique. Can't tell if you're doing Krav Maga or Arnis or Taekwondo. If your technique is good and your martial arts is good, they just know it sucks. That's it, right? They're trying to hit you and they can't hit you. That sucks for them. They're trying not to get hit, but you keep hitting them. You keep throwing them. You keep doing your thing. That sucks for them. They don't know. And in reality, so my father goes, the United System of Eskrima is a Filipino martial arts system, right? And so, we think of that and go, okay, yeah, so remaining from the Philippines. But I put myself in this idea of I'm a deckhand in a Spanish galleon, and I've been recruited or maybe even bought as a slave, who knows, but I'm on that ship, a ship of discovery, that's funded by the Spanish crown, and we're traveling the seas, right? And I knew something, maybe my uncles or somebody taught me something, so I know something of fighting, right, growing up or whatever. And maybe I've been in and out of many ships on many crews over my lifetime, and we're fighting on the deck with somebody that's trying to board us, or something's happening. Am I going to care that my technique came from a French guy that was doing savate? Maybe I didn't even know because I couldn't speak French. Who knows? Or am I going to care that I learned a kick that allowed me to interrupt my opponent's sword slash so that I can cut his arm off? I'm not going to care, right? I'm not going to care whether I learned it from another fellow Filipino Manila man or whatever, who's Papangan, and then this other trick I learned from this guy from Davao, and another trick I learned from my grandpappy in Ilocosur. I'm not going to care. I'm not going to care if it's Korean. I'm not going to care if it's like as an Escrimador and a warrior from the Philippines on a ship of discovery. I'm going to care that it works. Ultimately, there's this sense of pragmatism in authentic martial arts of any kind, whether you call it reality-based, street fighting, combat, whatever you want to call it. Whatever words in combinations make your art feel important or something like that. Ultimately, it doesn't work, right? And that comes from, and your ability to understand that comes from, steeping yourself deeply within a particular tradition, but also a mindset, right? So, and that comes, like a lot of times it doesn't come from one source, it comes from many sources. And, modern day martial artists, you started as a kid at Joe Karate's Taekwondo school on the corner of Main Street and 31st or something like that, right? Got your black belt when you're 12 something, and then went on to do Bujinkan, maybe jiu-jitsu, who knows, right? Did that for a while, and you come to a point where you're in some art that you say is, you realize, oh man, I wish I'd been training this art my whole life. Say it's the United System of Eskrima, and now you're challenged with, do I throw these things out because the thing that I like is better, or I think is better, or it's subjectively right? Or do I try to overcome a challenge of making all of it make sense together, right? Now, on the other hand, if you just train from one source, whether it be several instructors from the same organization, system, or really just one teacher, but it's one vocabulary, and it's a coherent, cohesive progression, especially like within the United System of Eskrima as I teach it, as my father made me understand it. He didn't necessarily teach it this way, but he helped me to understand it this way, that when we do something, it should be progressive in the way that we develop skill, that we should understand that the art and the structure is a living thing that's meant to adapt to the way people experience things in such a way as to help them along a path. I teach that the United System of Eskrima, my family system, is not a fighting system. It's a learning and training and teaching system that makes fighters. That's different, right? Because, no martial art fights. Martial artists fight, right? And so do we teach a collection of techniques? Learn these techniques with your hands up, 1 through 35. Learn these techniques when you're just standing there, 1 through 35. Learn this technique against clubs, 1 through 10. Learn this technique against knives, 1 through 7, etc., etc. All right, this footwork drill here, this there, but they don't tie together. That's not what I'm talking about. When you're steeped in an art, and your teacher and the curriculum, or teachers and the curriculum, can tie all those things together in a way where we can get past. See, like I always tell people, like anybody, you can teach yourself how to punch, and everybody kind of knows what a kick, what a punch, what an elbow. The what part and the how part are not all that interesting. You need to get through that, certainly, right? You might learn a little bit of why, even along the way, as you get more advanced, right? That's when you get to the black belt, right? And the black belt's supposed to mean now you're ready to train, because you've mastered the basics, meaning that you digested it enough so that way you can really press forward, right? As a teacher, in some organizations, you get your first degree black belt, you can teach. And that's really not for me to say whether one organization can or can't do that. But it operates from this idea that I only need to be 2 or 3 chapters of everyone else in order to be able to share something with people in the room, right? That doesn't invalidate the process of, being steeped deeply within one system, one vocabulary, one art or arts taught under one organization. You're less challenged when it comes to really putting things together if it's done cohesively, coherently, and developed in a progressive way within the individual, with the goal of, really don't care if you can regurgitate this material, but do you comprehend and can you employ this material? And it's much easier to arrive there if you're deeply seated. And you might ask, well, how long does that take? Well, if you have to ask how long that takes, this is probably the wrong thing for you, right? Because it's a path, a journey, right, that you can document with a notebook, right? Take some videos, do some voice. Now we have these things like this phone here, right, that I'm recording on, right? We have a way of documenting this, and we have a venue for it, whether it's your cloud drive, or whether it's just your memory directly on your phone or computer, whatever it is, or a website that you do in posterity. Some people will use their social media that way, right? So their TikTok, or I don't do the TikTok. That's how old I am. I don't do the TikTok. Your Instagram or your Facebook. God, no, please, not your Snapchat though, right? But You have a way of documenting these things and keeping track of them so that you can reflect back at that system, and maybe even if you take the turn and realize that what was given to you wasn't meant just for you, that you were supposed to be with others that went along that path with you, working hand in hand, brothers and sisters in arms, if you will, to give to the next generation, which is really, the task of a guru. Right? I was telling Guru Terry Joven and Eugene of Saktamoltsi style over the last weekend about how I really love the title Guru. Of all the titles instructors have, and I think June was there, Guru June was there. And a guru means in Sanskrit to uplift, right? Well, that's going to take, to truly uplift someone, you need a process for that, because that transformation isn't happenstance. Not if we're really getting good at doing that, right? So, yeah. We want to have a structure and a process. At least this is the Anayan way. And it's everything and nothing to do with emblems, medallions, sashes. My father made his last rendering of the curriculum. If you're wanting to be true to his art, he created a sash curriculum. So there are these levels between the medallions that you use the sashes or belts, if you will, for that, right? It's none of those things and all of those things together, because once you really understand what it is to be fully steeped in something and matured within that, right? And continue to refine as you continue to invest, right? You realize it's none of those things and every one of those things. The Anayan system of Eskrima is not the crossblock in Sarada that you learn when you first learn Sarada in the Anayan system of Eskrima. It is everything to do with that and has nothing to do with that at the same time. And that might not make sense to the person that's only trained 5, 6, 7, or maybe even just 8 years in any one given thing. But someone who's been training 15, 20, 25, 30, 40 years, they know. They know because they've gone through that process and they've seen people that didn't do it and people that did do it, and how it worked for each one of them, and how in a general way that structure can serve everyone. And the ones that don't need it, they don't need it. They continue to move forward. It doesn't hinder them in any way. And the ones that need that, whatever that structure element is, whether it's the terminology or the ranking progress or the structure of the different drills that you go through in sequence to develop skill, some people are going to skip that stuff. And I tell my instructors, neither the curriculum or the instructor should be the bottleneck in the process of development of the individual, because they're going to be their own bottleneck. They're going to be their own bottleneck, like Kai. Kai is one of my students that I've been teaching since he was like 6. He's 19 now. And I don't teach him very often anymore. And the reason why is he went to college. He's in university now. He's trying to, move on from being a child, an adolescent, a teenager, and he's in that process of becoming a man. And that's great, and I was part of that. And I don't have any ill will for that. But the truth is that now I don't teach him. That's okay. That doesn't mean he's not still learning from me and from his dad, who helped teach him, and all the other gurus that attended the classes and stuff like that when he was there. He can still learn from them, as I learned from my father. Still, having been deeply steeped in the art, I can go back, maybe even use a notebook to remember, right? But it's that process, and we need to understand that that process is set up in such a way that if you really deeply seat yourself in it, and it's well structured and well delivered, right, it'll not only make you capable physically, hopefully it'll give you a different moral standing than where you come from. You don't have to be a product of your environment. You can make yourself. Martial arts is a way of making yourself into an honorable, loyal, ethical human being who is not self-serving, right, but who gives to others. And guru, to uplift. That is, if that's not selfless, I don't know what is, right? And you see that through the development arts. And most of the people that I know that have been training, in the 30, 40 year mark, are very selfless and passionate at the same time. they want to give because they've taken so much time to become what I often say when one of our elders passes. Every time an elder passes, it's as if the Library of Alexandria is burned down again, right? They really have steeped themselves in something, right? Martial arts is interesting because you don't really get that true ability and true insight until you've been doing it more than 20 years. More than 20 years, right? There's lots of different academic fields of higher education. Very few of them take 20 years to get to the point where you could be considered having mastered at least fundamental things, right? For martial arts instructors, it's not only just understanding how to prevent someone from hurting you and how to hurt someone else in reply or in instigation or anything like that, but also how the body works. And I mean on a physiological level, and I don't mean in an academic way, but in a visceral way, right? And the structure of your training and being steeped deeply into one thing and having, true dedication, right? And not just solo training, but group training too. And not group training, but solo training too. You got to do both. Right? In order for you to really to gain that depth. I marvel at my student Lauren, that's Kai's dad, and Chris. They, each of them. Lauren's been with me 19 years. Chris has been with me about 23 years, and then Lauren has previous experience. He's a second-degree maestre in capoeira, among other things. And Chris had come to me after doing many years, several years, like three to five, I'm not sure, years of Filipino martial arts with other instructors before he started training in the United system of Eskrima, and then eventually became a guru under me. But I marvel at them because, they've gotten to that point where, my father would, you graduate, you'd say, it's I've given you the tools, it's up to you to use them. And I marvel at the result of them using those tools, right? They come to me after I haven't seen them for a week or 2 weeks or maybe a month because life gets in the way, and that's the bottleneck in their training is life, right? Which is a good thing. And but we're working on the same things from different angles because we're going through the same process of development and consideration, right? And that process of development and consideration, you don't really get there until you've been there for a while, right? My students aren't even done with really learning their fundamentals until they've been training a minimum of 10 years. And that's a minimum of dedicated 10 years. I didn't go away to college. I didn't get a girlfriend. I didn't get, a kid. I didn't, whatever, change my job, whatever it is that they did, and then come back, which is fine. All of those things are part of life. That's fine, right? But 10 years of just and that's the bare minimum, right? I usually tell people, they go I want to do a martial art, and what do I do, and what kind of art? I'm like, you need to do one thing 5 years, minimum, one thing 5 years. That won't make you good, right? But it'll give you a foundation, right? My Uncle Danny, he says that he'll train and he'll give anything 3 years. He'll try out anything 3 years. I once heard him say that at one of the seminars. He'll try anything for at least 3 years. I won't know whether I like it or whether it has anything of value or anything unless I give it at least 3 years of training. This is a man that's been training for 50, 60 years, right? And he's saying, I'm going to give at least 3 years to that. To someone coming in new, 3 years is a long time. For someone who's been around for a little bit, they'll say, man, 3 to 5, 8 years, 6 years, that's a lot of time. I put a lot of time into that. I was just in it. Yeah, sort of. It takes a lot to get there. My father, he trained privately for 10 years, right? And then continued to teach and take his what he had learned and develop it within himself and steep himself within one thing, Eskrima. for the rest of his life. Died doing it, right? Excuse me, there's a fire up north right now, and the smoke is causing me to have a lot of allergies, so I apologize. But yeah, whether you have a notebook or you take videos or you don't, because it's an oral tradition and you're required to remember it, take the time, both in solo and in group practice, to develop the deepest of roots and be selective of your instructors. I did a podcast about that. I think it was one of the first ones, about how do you select a teacher, right? Like, well, I mean, like, sure, does the teacher that you have, that you're looking at, do they have a relationship with their peers and seniors in the system that they are learning from? Do they have a relationship with their teacher? Do they even have a teacher now, right? Do they teach people that are younger than them? Do they teach people that are older than them? Do they have relationships with the community wide? Do they have students that are very senior? That's a big one for me anyways. You know, I've been teaching for 30 years. And I have students that have been with me for 25 or more years. So, you know, that's an important thing. It doesn't say anything, you know, actually, what was it? Somebody was talking to me during the memorial, and he was like, commenting on like whether an instructor is good. I said, well, you know, you can't really judge by the instructor. They're supposed to be good, right? So you have to you judge them. My father taught me this too. You judge a teacher by his students or her students, right? How long they've been, what they do, how they behave. Patrick got some compliments from a couple of the instructors over Memorial, because they can see how much effort he puts into assisting the event and the organization, and the way with which he handles me as the person that I teach the most, right? Because Patrick trains 6-7 times a week, right? Private lessons and group lessons, and travels with me often enough to present, not my most senior student, an intermediate student, right? But a very good student, right? And so I'm talking to this one guy, and I go, you're right, you know, like, that's it. And I call him over, and I say, get a stick. And I just start hitting him as hard as I can. Probably 80% speed and power as I'm talking, right? And, you know, and saying, you know, like, if your student can't do that, like, and I try to hurt Patrick sometimes, because he's that next generation. He's that reputation. I always look at, you know, like, if someone's steeped deeply in it and they're really, really going to dedicate themselves to that, they say that in word, and they say it by deed, and they're ready to do it in blood, if you will, then I'll facilitate that, right? And take that risk with them, right? And so, you know, that's part of that, you know, deepening your roots. And if you can't hit your student who's been with you 10 years plus, for me, when I thought to myself, directing only to myself, if I can't hit him with an honest attack, simple, like the first attack we learn to defend it, whatever it is, and they can't negate that attack, I have to ask myself, what have I been doing, and how have I served this person? Because the fundamental thing that I'm trying to get them to be able to do, they can't do. When they know it's going to happen, and where and how and why and when, all that stuff, right? But it's the years and years of training that gets us there, that being deeply seated in that, right? That's what gets us there. You can't hop around and do that. You can, but it's very challenging, right? So with Patrick, as an example, who's been with me about 11 years now, he took some time off to go to university. Brilliant mind, that guy, right? He's starting to deepen those roots, right? And getting to that point where he can put things together and truly understand that beyond like, well, this is a cross block, and this is how I parry a punch, and I remember drill number 35, and to, oh, well, now I see how the cross block and a parry and drill 35 connect, even though they're completely separate elements, and what they mean in terms of someone who's attacking me, or what it means when I'm attacking someone, and really starting to understand and be able to comprehend at a deeper level. And that comes from putting the time in, doing the work, right? Not everyone gets there, and not everyone should get there. I mean, my feeling is that, I first want to make sure that you can defend yourself. It doesn't even matter if it looks like Filipino martial arts. I almost don't even care if you remember who taught it to you and what the name of the style is, which is like some of the main things that we try to get students to figure out. Because that's serving the art, right? Initially, you're serving the student. I'm coming here because I want to learn how to defend myself. Well, let's get that done right away, because that's important. Self-defense doesn't wait until you're good enough or you're ready. So let's get there as fast as we can, right? Don't be the bottleneck in their training. And then we make practitioners who can tell you what it is, where it comes from, who the teachers were, the names of the styles, the names of the techniques, and all of that stuff. And then we make a fighter who can fight. And then we make an Eskrima, someone who can fight with Eskrima. And you look and go, wow, that's clearly Filipino martial arts. That's Eskrima. That's awesome, right? And then hopefully through that process with the deepening of the roots and putting time in, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, because you have that much to teach. They have that much to learn, right? Where you go to some schools and they struggle after 5 years to teach their students anything, which is a whole different subject, right? But that's steeping, that way where a lesson will diffuse and spread and permeate the rest of your art, the rest of your knowledge base in such a profound way that just a turn of that cube turns you into a different martial artist, a different Eskrima, because of one thing one guru said at one moment at some seminar in Manchester, New Hampshire, wherever it was that you got to see it, and from whoever, right? And you can remember that all with a notebook. You just call him back to Chris there. So, yeah, that's a subject I really wanted to talk about. I don't know what you guys all think about that, but I definitely think that, dedicating yourself is a worthwhile thing in any endeavor, right? I mean, Miyamoto Musashi's whole thing about, like, there's the farmer, there's the artisan, there's the merchant, there's the warrior, there's the statesman. You master one, you master all, that kind of thing. Dedicating yourself to one thing is a good thing, right? And it doesn't have to be the job that you have in this modern day where you're lining the pockets of some guy that sits in an ivory tower on Broadway in Manhattan or something like that. But, it could be just the enriching of yourself and maybe be able to pass that on to your progeny or the children of your siblings or something. Whatever you do with it, hopefully that you do that serving others, uplifting others, and being a good human being, as my friend Locks Trevis likes to say at his kickboxing classes. Be a good human. Right? I'll see you guys on the training floor.